We'll call the Public Safety Committee to order, and I ask for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion or correction? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to start this morning with the sheriff. Sean, if you'd like to start.
Good morning. Have a really short agenda for today. Under the action agenda, item A, we request a resolution to appropriate funds, $9,500 from the Computer Reserve Fund to purchase laptop computers and the associated hardware for 6 patrol cars.
Okay. Do we have a motion to get that on the floor? Supervisor Simpson, do we have a second? Supervisor McDonald, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that carries.
Under topics for discussion, I just have a brief update. We filed an application with the Adirondack Park Agency back in December of 2015 for a permit to erect a radio communications tower off Maggie's Road in the town of Warrensburg. As of last week, we finally received our permit from the APA, and with that said, we're going to be moving forward with the construction of that tower. A lot of the work has already been done at the site. Now we're actually going to get the tower.
Okay. Any questions on that for Sean? Anything else for the sheriff's office this morning? All right, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Marcy?
I am here to give you updates on several things that's going on in the world of public defense. I'd like to start with some new legislation that went through. It is not in the packet, it was just approved. There is a public defense mandate relief that was passed, which is beginning in the fiscal year April 1st, 2023. The state will take over, according to the legislation, funding public defense. So that will be a big change. Beginning on April 1st, 2017, the state is going to be shall reimburse 25% of the expenses for providing counsel and services, but the magic word is other than counsel. So they won't pay for staff salaries, they will be reimbursing for other expenditures. And that will increase, it's 25% the first year and 10% each year thereafter. So that's a big change, and I wanted to make sure you knew about it. If you want copies of the legislation, I can get that to you. I just wanted to make sure you knew about the change as soon as it came up. There also was the issue that is Warren County issue, which is the authorization for off-hours arraignment, and that is Senate Bill 7209A. D.A. Hogan, myself, Judge Hobbs from Glens Falls City Court, and the 4th Judicial District were trying to come up with a solution for after-hours arraignments. I'm going to give you some documents, I'm going to give you some numbers in terms of how much time and effort is put into arraignments and the after-hour arraignments. I have the month of May, this past month, figures for you. We did 63 additional arraignments besides being in court, okay? We did, give me one second. I broke it out for my office in terms of whether it occurred during the day, but that court is not in session. So we're talking about additional arraignments that we do when a court is not in session. So we did 63 for the month of April. And the numbers, there's my master sheet, hang on one sec. The numbers are high. We had 40 arraignments that were after hours that were not weekend arraignments. So what happens is we get a call from a court saying we have someone who needs to be arraigned, the court is not in session, the judge goes to the court, we go, the DA's office go, and law enforcement go bringing the defendant, whether it's Sheriff's Department or State Police or Glens Falls City Police Department. We go there, we have to review the paperwork, we have to meet with the client, we make a bail application, the DA makes their bail recommendation, and the judge sets bail on that person. The Harold Herring decision that affected the 5 counties, not Warren County, that got all the money was because arraignment is a critical stage, so you need to have an attorney's at arraignment. The DA's office does not technically have to be there. They can make a recommendation through law enforcement, but because my office is showing up, as DA Hogan has indicated to you previously, her office shows up also shows up, because it's important, if there's a decision being made on someone, it's important to have all the parties there. So, let's say I have somebody in 4 different courts. I get a call, I need somebody in another court. It can be at any time that the judge says during our regular work days. I have to have that person stop what they're doing, go to whatever court it is, and deal with the case. And so we've had 40 in the month on top of when we're normally doing everything else. So that means we're not meeting with clients, we're not working on files, we're not returning phone calls, we're not seeing clients at the jail. So it is a huge burden on my office. We're required to do it, we're doing it. We also have the weekends that we cover fine, and we've worked out some creative solutions on that. But the purpose of the legislation that we put through 4th Judicial District and everyone is to have an after-hours arraignment location. So the question becomes, where should that location be? And as I talked to the committee before, we are talking about using the old jail, the processing area with the sally port going in so that the prisoners could be brought in through those doors in a secured area and into a makeshift courtroom. Judge Hobbs indicates OCA, there's a grant through the Magistrates Associate that he is going to be applying for to get funds to reconfigure the room. But the space is good to use. OCA has conceptually approved it. There was a walk-through previously we discussed with Judge Caruso, so they are familiar with it. But the legislation is important because it becomes our after-hour courtroom, and what we would like to use it for in theory right now is for 8:30 in the morning and 5 o'clock at night. So we don't have to drive all over the county to handle the arraignment. In addition, the holiday weekend, when it was the first weekend of Americade, Judge Hobbs covered court for all the county. For any case that occurred for arraignments, Friday night, Saturday, or Sunday, he handled. There was 15 cases. Those are my records. 14 or 15 cases that day that he handled for all the county. Normally, we would have been driving to 5 different courts on that date because the cases occurred in Lake George, Chester, Glens Falls, Queensbury, and then there was another location. So the centralized location would be that it would save time and money for the DA's office, time and money for the public defender's office, and time and money for law enforcement because they go to one location. So that legislation has passed. Thereafter, I have met with Buildings and Grounds. Jeff Tennyson, he's aware of the proposal, so I expect Buildings and Grounds to hear more about it. But I wanted to let you know that the legislation is passed. It will take a while for everything to come to fruition, but it was an important piece. And we are, as I would call it, a beta test site. We will be the first county up and doing this. And because we feel it's more cost effective for everyone, and again, we're trying to cut costs for everyone involved and keep things moving quickly, as required under the attorney at arraignment. So I wanted to let you know about those kinds of legislation. That's in addition to what I put on my agenda. So now I'm up to the agenda piece. My agenda piece is my problem. My problem is the numbers that we're getting have been very high. As you're aware, the attorney at arraignment piece I've talked about, so you know about that. Let me just give you some examples in terms of January 1st of last year through May 31st of last year, and then the same comparison January 1st of this year through May 31st of this year. So I'm comparing the exact time period, the exact 5 months. In 2015, for that period, we had 818 cases that we handled that were new cases. That same time period this year, we have 1,112 cases. That is 294 more cases that we have handled this year during that 5-month period alone. That's a 26% increase in our caseload that we're handling. The other piece that goes along with this is, I know you've all read the letter I sent, and it's long, and I do appreciate you reading it. It lays out my issues, but I just want to make sure you understand the standards that Office of Indigent Legal Services, which will eventually be the umbrella agency for taking over Public Defender's Office, has set legal standards for how many cases you can have. It says 138 felonies is a caseload, 367 misdemeanors or violations is a caseload, and 138 family court cases. And I just want to let you know, in 2014, we had 365 felony cases, 1,041 misdemeanor and violations, and 329 cases that are family court cases. So if you figure out the number of cases like you can have per attorney, which is the legal standard, and the number of cases we should have had 7.75 attorneys in my office, plus an attorney to supervise, and that to supervise the attorneys. It has nothing to do with any administrative function or any other functions that the head of a department would do. Those are the numbers for 2014. 2015, and these are the figures that we submit to New York State, so they're our verified figures that we use. We had an increase in felonies of almost 100. We had 456 felonies, and we had an increase in misdemeanor and violations, a little over 100, so we had 1,189, and then we were about the same on family court. We had 303. So when you figure out, based on those caseloads of 138 for felonies, 367 for misdemeanors and violations, and 138 cases for family court, we should have had 8.74 attorneys plus a supervisor. When I took over as PD, I had discussed these issues with Mr. Dusick, and we felt that at that point we were able to handle everything. I understand we had more cases than we had attorneys that we need, but based on my experience level and Mr. Wappett's level, we felt that we could handle the difference, and we weren't going to request additional staffing. We didn't feel it was appropriate. With the new, what has changed is the attorneys at arraignment piece that has increased our caseload by 294 cases in a 5-month period, plus the new standard that's going into effect in October. In October, the Indigent Legal Services standard for an attorney at arraignment to qualify has increased from to 250% of the poverty level. My first question is, how can I tell you what that numbers are going to mean? I can't tell you. I don't know what that number is going to mean, but I can tell you we all agree, meaning the Defenders Association, my office, the assigned counsel office, and the county attorney office, we've been discussing these issues. Our caseload is going to increase, because currently it's 150% of the federal poverty level, and it's going up to 250. So there's no question we are going to have more cases. The third piece that goes into all my problem is in January we will have a new family court judge. Now, we were all very sorry about Judge Green's death, but it meant that we only had one family court judge. Well, the county did a great job in making a temporary courtroom for the anticipation of the changes in the county building, which is great. However, they are bringing in judges to work in that courtroom. So I have had the experience where I have, normally what would happen if we only have one family court judge, that judge hears all the cases. But since Judge Wade has been coming in to cover, I have Judge Kirschko on, and I have Judge Wade on, and I had one attorney who was covering all the family court cases. That person cannot be in two places at the same time. I've had to rearrange schedules to fit Judge Wade's schedule, okay? So I can tell you in January, I am going to need another family court attorney. There's no way that I can cover with what I have. So based on all these issues that are going on, I have made a request in the letter and on the agenda for 2 attorneys. 1, because of the caseload increase and the caseload increase we have now, and 2, the second one obviously would be for when in January when we have a new family court judge. I've also made a request for a secretary because we're going to have more paperwork than we have now. Right now I have 2 secretaries. One is covered fully by the Office's Indigent Legal Services grant, and she covers all the grant stuff, and she also does all the overflow. And I have my 1 secretary that we have for the entire office that we've had since day 1. So my first question that you would want to ask me is, well, can you get grant funding for this from oil? And the answer is no. I've applied to every grant that exists. We have never been turned down for a grant, but there is no additional grant funding for additional personnel that exists right now that we can get. The next question you're going to ask me, well, what's in your budget? I don't have anything else in my budget. I am telling you that I have a problem. I am very sorry to tell you I have a problem. That is not my intention to give you a problem, but I am telling you that there is an ethical and legal standard of how many cases we can take. I am concerned that when October hits and the increase in cases come in, we may reach a point that because we're over the number of attorneys, we have more cases than we have the number of attorneys to handle, that I may be at an ethical point at some point in time where I have to say, my office cannot handle any more cases. If I say those magic words, the assigned counsel office then has to assign those cases out, and her budget goes up. So there's a catch-22 here. Somewhere down the line, either my budget has to go up, or the assigned counsel office budget has to go up. Now, when I first started here, we did an analysis of how much it costs to run the PD's office versus hiring private attorneys on the assigned counsel list to cover. And the determination, based meeting with Joanne, Mr. Lynch, and Mr. Dusick, was that my office is much more cost-effective to handle it than having the assigned counsel office handle it. So I'm letting you know I am requesting additional staffing. I don't have funds for it. I can't get grant funding for it, but it is an area, and I understand my office is unfunded mandates. I know it's a burden on the county. There's nothing I can do to change that. We try to work efficiently and handle all the cases, but I am letting you know, because it's my job to let you know if there's an issue going on, and I'm telling you that I'm very concerned about the additional caseload. One of the questions that you may be thinking, well, how is this going to affect the DA's office? Well, you know that Ms. Hogan asked for additional funding for attorneys for covering weekend arraignments, so she's feeling the same thing we are. I don't see her caseload increasing because she handles all the cases to begin with. All the cases that come in for prosecution are assigned to her office. This way she'd be dealing with our office on more cases, but more people will be qualifying for assigned counsel services, and we have to provide it. And I'm sorry to give you bad news, but I'm honest with you, and I think it's important to tell you as soon as possible when I know of things. So I'm telling you about the legislation that went on. I know there was discussions previously when Mrs. LaFountain came in, and there was a discussion about the new standards that are going into effect. I know that the county attorney and I and Ms. LaFountain have talked about it, and we are all very concerned about it, and I need to tell you what my concerns are, and I'm asking for additional funding.
Okay, so do we have a motion from the committee? As I understand it, we're looking to authorize to hire 2 additional attorneys and 1 secretary, and this will, of course, go to personnel and finance for further approval, but what is the will of the committee? Do we have a motion to approve this? Motion by Supervisor Montesi, seconded by Supervisor Gerard. Is there any other questions, Supervisor Seaver?
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable moving forward without having some specific questions answered. And is this something that has to be done at this meeting, or do we have a little bit of time?
I can tell you, I gave you the numbers, how much we've increased for the first 5 months of the year, 296 cases, which is 26%. However, I can't tell you what the figures are going to be in October, and I know you want to know what that's going to be and how it's going to affect it. I can't give you the answer. I feel, as the department head, I have to let you know that the state has made changes. It affects the county and all the counties, and no one has allowed for funding for personnel, so I don't know how to give you numbers about how it's going to be in the future.
Go ahead.
Marcy, that's not what I'm asking
Okay,
for.
then I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
I'd just like a little bit of time perhaps to sit and talk personally. You're bringing up a lot of concerns that Joy has brought up with her office as well, and while, you know, you're putting a request in front of us for 2 additional attorneys and secretarial staff, over the past year or so, we've been increasing not only the salaries, but the staff within your department. I'd like to take a look also at the effect that it has on Joy's office. I, for the last several months, have brought to our committee and asked our county administrator as well as Jeff Tennyson to look at the situation that Joy is in. And, you know, she's got a half a person, and she's in an incredibly unsafe area. She has talked to us about this. These 2 issues go hand in hand, and I just see us continuing to fund your office and turn a blind eye to her office, and that bothers me quite a bit. But I'd also, I've got a list of questions, and I'm certainly not prepared to recommend this funding at this point until I'm able to satisfy that information. I've talked to our county attorney in the past about setting up a meeting. I've spoken with our supervisor, Wood, about this as well, and so my question isn't what are the numbers in October, it's about what we're currently doing and looking forward. So I'm not ready to move on it.
No problem. Can I just address one issue? You said that we got increased staff. I got 1 new person, and that was my sixth assistant.
Right.
And that was grant funded, so that's
Right.
paid by the state. And that was because, and her grant funding is based on attorneys at arraignment and case law reduction. So she works on Saturdays, and she works in the evenings also. She starts later in the day and goes later
Right.
in order to cover the evening arraignments.
I understand
Okay, I
that,
just
but
wanna
it's
make
still an
sure.
increase in staffing, it's,
Yep.
even though it's from a grant fund. And then we had increase in salaries, and, you know, now we're looking at 2 more attorneys plus
Mhm.
secretarial staff. I just, you know, I can go through my list of questions here, but nobody wants me to do that, and we're already running behind schedule. So like I said, I'm not inclined to support this at this point.
Supervisor Brock, did you have a?
Yeah, is there any way we could do some of this back, like a per diem, like we have attorneys that would come in on a case basis rather than hiring them?
I can certainly explore that area. I don't know in terms of the numbers of hours that in terms of someone would need to work, but I could certainly explore any issues like that. And in terms of Ms. Seaver's questions, I certainly would be available to meet with anyone whenever you want to discuss these issues. They're important issues for the county and for all of us. And I'm not saying you have to make a decision today or not make a decision, but I just feel like I need to bring it all forward.
Supervisor Gerard?
I don't have a problem, moving forward to personnel, but, before we get to that point, could you prepare comparative analysis of what Washington County and Saratoga County and how they're handling it and their staffing and where they're headed with it all? I think that would be helpful in the dialogue of how everyone's looking at it. I don't wanna get ahead of the curve with staffing and jumping at something right away. And I would ask, the county administrator's office if they could also do their diligence and report back to us as to what other counties are looking at and how they're handling it. And I'm all for if we could do it per diem as Supervisor Brock recommended.
I can advise you in terms of how Washington County is doing it. Washington County is part of the 5 counties in the civil suit, so they're getting $1 million or a huge amount of money to deal with these issues and revamping things. So I understand you would want an analysis compared to them, but their situation is different because they have unlimited state funding, as I view it, from the civil settlement, from the state. So I understand you want them included, I will get their information, but I don't think it's gonna be apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, I understand it happens, but it'll give, at least if you can explain positioning.
Sure.
So that moving forward, we had an understanding of that.
The other thing I'd like to add is at the end of July is the Defenders Association statewide meeting, which I will be attending, and I'll be able to report back in terms of what other counties are also doing in terms of that. Again, I'm trying not to be behind on the curve. If something's gonna happen, I wanted everyone to know in advance.
Supervisor Conover?
Thank you. I would just want to underscore what Dan recommended, that we join and reach out to the American State Association of Counties regarding this, because if the chart I'm pulling up here is correct, persons in family household, I'll just pick a size 3, is in round numbers $20,090, and 1.5 of that would be what, 30? 2.5 would be 50. So
Below the federal poverty level, not above.
would be below.
Yes, sir.
So it would be, so that, I'm not saying I'm doing the
Yeah.
math here correctly, but even if I'm close to correct, it's a huge increase in eligibility.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the question of, suppose someone didn't meet the income guidelines, but indicated that they didn't have any money to hire an attorney anyway. Is that then assigned by the court? How is that handled?
The court can make the assignment. The assigned counsel office, my understanding, is an umbrella agency of the court. They supervise the assignments, keep track of them, and the billing is submitted to the judge for signature and review, and then it gets paid. And I could be wrong. If I said that wrong, please correct me. But that's how it works. So the judge can assign. So I have been in court before where someone, let's say it's somebody, a child, age 18, but they're considered under their parents' income, and the parent doesn't want to come in and fill out the paperwork, doesn't get along with the kid, thinks the kid's not doing well, whatever reason, the judge can assign me on that case without the parent appearing and submitting documentation. The judge makes a determination on the record that he feels the person is qualified based on whatever factors.
The reason I ask that is
Yeah.
that I'm just wondering how much of this was getting assigned to us anyway
I don't
by the judge, and that would be something that you could look into.
Yeah, I don't think we have a large number that way. I have seen it happen. I would say it probably happens once or twice a month, but I don't see that more than that in my experience. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Any other questions? Hearing none, let's call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Two opposed? All right, carries. Anything else today, Marcy?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm sorry to take up so much time.
That's fine. Anything else to come before the Public Safety Committee? Hearing nothing, a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Gerard, second by Supervisor Frazier. All those in favor?
Recession's over.
Thank you.
Going like this.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
And they have less staff than the PD.
Only
Why,
because it ends up in.
why does she need staff more than the DA's office, who handles every single case?